Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Learn English with Story. Let me ask you, would you keep trying after failing once, twice, maybe 10 times? Thomas Edison failed not 10, not 100, but more than 10,000 times. And yet, he became the man who lit up the world. His story shows us that failure is never the end. It is the hidden path to success. Stay with me, because this lesson might change how you see failure forever. When we switch on a light bulb today, the room glows instantly, and we take it for granted. But behind that simple light, there is a story of a boy who was told he could never learn. A boy who grew up poor, half-deaf, and often rejected. A boy who turned weakness into strength and failure into fuel. That boy was Thomas Alva Edison. He was born on February 11, 1847, in Milan, Ohio. The youngest of 7 children, little Thomas was not like the others. While other kids ran outside and played games, he stayed quiet, staring at the world with wide eyes, asking endless questions. Why does the sun shine? Why do birds fly? How does the clock tick? His mind was a restless sea of curiosity, but the schoolroom was no friend to him. Teachers grew frustrated with his questions. One day, a teacher angrily declared, "Thomas is addled. He cannot learn like other children." Those words could have crushed him. Imagine being only 7 years old and told you were too slow to learn. But someone refused to believe it. His mother, Nancy Edison, saw something in him. She pulled her son out of school and decided to teach him at home. In their little house, she turned the living room into a classroom. She filled the shelves with books, from science to history, from literature to philosophy. She encouraged Thomas to read, to experiment, to explore. She told him, "You are not slow, you are gifted. You see the world in ways others cannot." Years later, Edison would say with tears in his eyes, "My mother was the making of me. She was so true, so sure of me. I felt I had someone to live for, someone I must not disappoint." But the truth was even more dramatic. After his mother passed away, Edison found an old letter from his school. It did not say addled. It said something much harsher. "Your son is mentally ill and unfit for school. We cannot allow him to attend anymore." His mother had hidden this cruel message. Instead of telling him he was broken, she told him he was brilliant. "Thomas," she said, "you are too smart for this school. The teachers are not clever enough to teach you." That small lie gave him the confidence to keep going when the world wanted him to stop. At home, Thomas built his first little laboratory in the basement. Glass bottles, powders, wires, and chemicals filled the shelves. Neighbors sometimes complained about the strange smells, the little bangs and explosions. But to Thomas, this was not noise. This was discovery. By the age of 12, Edison wanted more than experiments. He wanted independence. So he began selling newspapers, snacks, and candies on trains. But he did not stop there. Using a small hand press, he printed his very own newspaper, the Grand Trunk Herald. It became the first newspaper ever published on a moving train. He filled it with local news, train schedules, and sometimes even scientific notes. This was Edison's first taste of combining creativity with business. Yet, life was not kind. One day, while carrying out experiments in the baggage car, a chemical bottle tipped over and caught fire. The furious conductor stormed in, kicked Edison and his little lab off the train, and ended his business there. The boy who dreamed of inventions was left humiliated. And then came an even greater blow. Edison began losing his hearing. Some said it was due to scarlet fever. Others claimed a conductor once pulled him by the ears too hard. Whatever the reason, by his teenage years, Thomas was nearly deaf. Most children would have collapsed under that weight. But Edison turned it into strength. He later said, "My deafness saved me from distractions. It helped me focus entirely on my work." The world became quieter, and in that silence, his imagination grew louder. At 16, Edison's courage saved a life. He noticed a 3-year-old boy wandering onto train tracks just as a runaway train approached. Without thinking, Edison rushed forward and pulled the boy away. The boy's father, a telegraph operator, was so grateful that he taught Thomas how to use the telegraph machine. This skill became a turning point. It gave Edison steady work as a telegraph operator while allowing him to continue his experiments late into the night. But success did not come quickly. One of his earliest inventions was an electric vote recorder. He believed it would help governments make faster decisions, but politicians rejected it. They did not want quick votes. They wanted time to argue and persuade. Edison had spent months creating something nobody wanted. He was disappointed, but not defeated. That failure taught him a principle he carried for life. Never invent something that people don't need. During those years, Edison often lived in poverty. At times, he slept in the basement of a friend's office. At other times, he barely had enough money to buy food. Yet his belief in himself remained unbroken. He reminded himself, "Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time." And then, at last, came a breakthrough. Edison improved the stock ticker, a device used in financial markets to record stock prices. This invention brought him recognition, and more importantly, money. He earned $40,000, a fortune at the time. For the boy who once mixed chemicals in a basement, it was the first proof that his ideas had value. With this money, Edison built his first proper laboratory at Menlo Park, New Jersey. It was a place he called his invention factory. Here he would gather brilliant minds, test wild ideas, and begin the work that would change the world. The child once rejected as unteachable, the teenager thrown off trains and called deaf, was now ready to enter the stage of history. ESL Checkpoint 1. Curiosity, the strong desire to know or learn something. Persistence, the ability to keep going, even when things are hard. Invention, a new device or idea that someone creates. Practice sentence, Edison's curiosity and persistence helped him turn every failure into a new invention. Edison was no longer just a curious boy with home experiments and small inventions. He was ready for something bigger, something that could touch millions of lives. The world was waiting for a spark of light, and Edison was determined to give it to them. What happened next would turn his little laboratory into the birthplace of miracles. When Thomas Edison opened his laboratory at Menlo Park, New Jersey, he called it his invention factory. And that is exactly what it became. A place where imagination turned into machines and ideas were hammered into reality. At Menlo Park, Edison gathered a team of talented assistants. They worked day and night, sometimes through meals, sometimes through sleep. In this building, invention was not a hobby. It was a way of life. Edison often said, Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. He believed brilliant ideas were nothing without long hours of sweat, testing, and failure. And so, Menlo Park became a hive of endless experiments. The first big breakthrough there was the phonograph in 1877. For the first time in history, a human voice could be recorded and played back. When Edison demonstrated it, people were shocked, even frightened. Some called it magical. Others whispered it was the devil's work. But most saw it for what it was, a miracle. The phonograph made Edison world famous overnight. They began calling him the Wizard of Menlo Park. Yet, despite the glory, Edison's eyes were already fixed on a far greater challenge: light. At that time, cities around the world were still dark. People relied on candles, oil lamps, or gas lamps. They were expensive, dangerous, and weak. Edison dreamed of giving light to every home, every street, every corner of the world. But creating a safe, practical electric light was a problem that had defeated many inventors before him. He was not the first to try, but Edison believed he could be the one to succeed. He declared boldly, "We will make electricity so cheap that only the rich will burn candles." And so began one of the most grueling battles of his life. Inside Menlo Park, Edison and his team began testing filaments, the little wires that would glow inside the bulb. They tried metal, they tried platinum, they tried hundreds of materials. Each time the bulb flickered, each time it burned out. Days turned into months. Failures piled up like mountains. Some assistants lost hope, but Edison refused to quit. He told them, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." This way of thinking was his true invention. Where others saw failure, he saw progress. Every mistake was a clue, every broken bulb a step forward. Finally, in 1879, after thousands of trials, Edison discovered the answer: carbonized bamboo filament. The bulb glowed bright, and it lasted long enough to be practical. At last, the impossible had been made real. The news spread quickly. Crowds gathered outside Menlo Park to see the miracle of light. When they saw entire rooms illuminated by bulbs, their faces glowed with wonder. For the first time in history, darkness had been conquered by electricity. But Edison was not satisfied with simply inventing a bulb. He knew the world needed a complete system: generators, wires, switches, and power stations. In 1882, in New York City, he opened the world's first electric power station. Hundreds of homes lit up at once. The age of electricity had begun, yet success did not come without battles. Edison soon faced his greatest rival, Nikola Tesla, a brilliant inventor who once worked for him. Tesla believed alternating current, AC, was the future of electricity, while Edison insisted on direct current, DC. This rivalry became known as the War of the Currents. Edison fought fiercely. He even staged public demonstrations, showing how dangerous AC could be. At one event, he used AC to electrocute animals, hoping to scare people away from Tesla's system. It was a dark chapter in his career. In the end, AC did win. Tesla's vision became the global standard, but Edison's contributions were not erased. Without him, electricity might never have reached homes so quickly. He showed the world that light was not just a dream. It was a necessity. Through these years, Edison's personal life was filled with both love and sorrow. He married Mary Stilwell in 1871. She was only 16 when they wed, and though they loved each other deeply, life was not easy. Edison worked long hours, often forgetting to eat, sometimes forgetting to rest. Mary grew lonely. In 1884, tragedy struck. Mary died suddenly at just 29 years old. Her loss broke Edison's heart. To cope, he buried himself in work. He once said, "When you have exhausted all possibilities, remember this: you haven't." These words reflected his life, a man who could be crushed but never destroyed. 2 years later, Edison married Mina Miller, a young woman 19 years his junior. Mina brought him stability, a home where he could return after long nights in the lab. Together they had 3 children, adding to the 3 from his first marriage. Even as a father, Edison never stopped being an inventor. His children remembered him as loving but absent-minded, often too busy experimenting to join family dinners. Yet he always encouraged them to ask questions, to stay curious, to explore the world with open eyes. By the 1890s, Edison was a global celebrity. He had invented not only the light bulb and the phonograph, but also improvements to the telephone, the telegraph, and early motion picture devices. He held hundreds of patents, and his laboratories were producing new ideas every month. But with fame came enemies. Critics accused him of being too controlling, too eager to claim credit, too competitive with rivals. And some of these criticisms were fair. Edison was fiercely protective of his inventions. He was not afraid of controversy. But one thing was certain: he never stopped moving forward. For him, invention was not a single act. It was a way of life. He once said, "There is a better way. Find it." That belief carried him through every storm. ESL checkpoint 2 filament, a thin wire inside a bulb that glows when electricity passes through. Persistence, refusing to give up, even after many failures. Rivalry, competition between 2 people or groups. Practice sentence: Edison's persistence with the filament and his rivalry with Tesla shaped the future of electricity. The world now knew Edison as a man who could bend darkness into light, yet life still had more tests for him. Fires, heartbreaks, fierce rivals, and the passing years, none of these could dim his spirit. But how does a man continue to shine when everything he has built turns to ashes? That is the next chapter of his story. The world now knew Edison as the man who bent darkness into light. But life had more tests for him. Tests of fire, loss, and time itself. In 1914, tragedy struck. A massive fire swept through his laboratory. Years of experiments, priceless equipment, and thousands of notes were destroyed. The flames lit up the night sky, turning Edison's life's work into ashes. Most people would collapse under such a blow, but not Edison. Standing outside the burning building, he called to his son with words that revealed his spirit. "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." Instead of despair, he found wonder. Instead of mourning, he chose courage. The very next morning, at 67 years old, he gathered his team and said, "We've just cleared out some old rubbish. Now we can start fresh." This resilience became his trademark. Edison could lose everything and still begin again. He once said, "I am too old to cry, but I am not too old to start over." Even as he grew older, Edison's hunger to create never left him. He filed patent after patent, eventually reaching over 1,000 in his lifetime. He explored motion pictures, improved batteries, and even looked into renewable energy. His mind was a river that never stopped flowing. One of his closest friends during these years was Henry Ford, the founder of the Ford Motor Company. The two men often spent evenings together, sharing ideas, taking walks, and speaking of the future. It was said they even built houses next to each other in Florida, so they could remain neighbors until the end. But not every part of Edison's life shone brightly. His relentless work often took him away from his family. His children loved him, but they sometimes described him as distant, a father whose mind was always buzzing with experiments. Still, he encouraged their curiosity, just as his mother had once encouraged his. And then there was the rivalry, the bitter battle with Nikola Tesla. Though Tesla's alternating current eventually triumphed, history would not forget Edison's fight. Some called him stubborn. Others saw him as fiercely loyal to his vision. Love him or criticize him, no one could ignore him. Recognition did come in his later years. He received medals, honors, and even the Congressional Gold Medal in 1928. Leaders around the world praised his genius, but Edison himself remained humble. "There is always a better way," he said. "Find it." What made him extraordinary was not just his inventions, but the way he thought about failure. To Edison, every setback was data, every obstacle a puzzle waiting to be solved. He once explained, "The three great essentials to achieve anything worthwhile are hard work, stick-to-itiveness, and common sense." By the 1920s, Edison's health began to fail. He had grown old, his body weaker, but his curiosity burned as fiercely as ever. On October 18, 1931, at the age of 84, Thomas Edison passed away. The news spread across the world like a shadow falling over day. To honor him, cities across America did something symbolic. They turned off their electric lights for 1 full minute. Streets, once glowing with the bulbs he had made possible, sank into darkness. It was a silence of light, a tribute to the man who had given the world its brightness. But Edison's story did not end with his death. His inventions laid the foundation for entire industries. Recorded music, film, electricity, communication. Every time we switch on a light, listen to a record, or watch a movie, we echo Edison's legacy. More than anything, he left behind a mindset. He showed us that failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of success. He showed us that curiosity is not a distraction. It is the engine of discovery. And he showed us that perseverance can turn ordinary people into world changers. Think about his life for a moment. A boy once labeled addled and unfit for school. A boy who lost most of his hearing before he became a man. A boy who sold candy on trains to support his family. That same boy grew up to light up the world. If Edison's journey teaches us one lesson, it is this: greatness is not born. It is built, brick by brick, failure by failure, step by step. ESL Checkpoint 3, Resilience. The ability to recover quickly after difficulties. Legacy. What someone leaves behind after their life. Perseverance. Continuing to do something despite problems or obstacles. Practice sentence. Edison's resilience and perseverance built a legacy that continues to shape our lives today. Edison's light still shines, not just in the bulbs above us, but in the courage of every dreamer, every inventor, every person who dares to try one more time. So the question is, what will you do with your light? Will you hide it? Or will you, like Edison, let it shine for the world to see. Thank you for joining me on this inspiring journey through the life of Thomas Edison. His story reminds us that failure is never the end. It is only another step on the road to success. If you enjoyed this lesson, please like the video, share it with a friend who needs some motivation, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories to improve your English and inspire your life. Until next time, keep learning, keep dreaming, and remember, you were born to shine.